Hello Summoners, welcome back to another ProGuides video. My name is Nathan Ng, and today we'll be talking about our predictions for the worst champions going into patch 12.5. It can be very hard to understand how different buffs and nerfs are going to affect the meta. Sometimes a seemingly huge nerf just brings a god tier champion down to the S tier, and they're still plenty OP. Other times what seems like a minor 2 base AD reduction causes a champion to drop off the rift completely. So we're here to steer you away from what we think are going to be the worst champions in each role this patch. We'll start off our list of champions to avoid with Gragas in the top lane. There have been times in the past where Gragas top was really good and arguably even the best possible pick in the role, but those times are long gone now. He's pretty hard outclassed by champions of all classes. The one major use that he had before was being able to stomp bruisers and shut them out completely, but with them being able to very easily itemize towards anti-magic items now, even that use is gone. Gragas is actually a pretty strong tank for early to mid-game skirmishes where his high damage, disruption, and decent beefiness shines, but that's about it. He falls off super hard in the late game 5v5. His engage is really unreliable, being entirely dependent on having flash up, and even then you're very rarely going to be able to reach that enemy backline. Pretty much every other tank is a better pick, or better yet, you can just abuse a broken bruiser or juggernaut. If you really want to play this guy, you should be picking him as an AP mid laner, where he's actually pretty strong. Avoiding the champions on this list is a good starting point ranking up, but if you're actually serious about climbing, you should check out ProGuides.com. We have courses from all your favorite streamers and pros like Core JJ, Aframu, and Xmithy to really help you understand how to play your role. And if you want a more personalized experience, we have coaches available 24/7 ready to help you guys become the best. Our coaches are top tier players that spent years climbing the solo queue ladder to get where they are now, and they're ready to share everything that they've learned with you. Find our site down in the description box below. Now let's get back on topic, shall we? The next champion that you'll want to steer clear of is Olaf. Whether it's an off-meta top lane or his main role as a jungler, Olaf is just really awful right now. When we saw the bruiser item changes, we knew it could go one of two ways. The more offensive focused items would either make him super snowbally and therefore OP, a la Riven, or he'd just be even more useless since he'd be easier to blow up. Well, being that he's on this list, it's the latter. Olaf has always been a champion that's designed to use high damage and sticking power to bully his opponents early. His overwhelming dueling power is then supposed to let him snowball that lead hard, and then you get such a lead that you just roll over the enemy backline in fights. Well, in theory anyway. But the issue at the moment is that he's just absolutely getting melted in team fights. By the time that you even hit the enemy ADC, you're probably dead. He just doesn't do that well in the meta that revolves around enchanters and hyper carries. He doesn't fare much better in the side lane either. Pretty much every other top lane duelist outscales him by the time that you reach just 2 items, and from then on out, he's completely useless. Now for the jungle, the first champion to avoid is Gwen. Seeing her on the nerf list for this patch is pretty interesting. She performs well in higher brackets of skill, specifically Diamond plus Korean solo queue, but that's about it. In lower elos, she's just awful. In pro play, she's pretty abysmal, with a sub 40% win rate when played as a jungler on patch 12.3. Plenty of other champions could use nerfs, like Kha'Zix, who has been the best performing jungler in the game for like half a year, but I guess they didn't pull his name out of the hat yet. Anyway, with Gwen being just a really low performing jungler prior to 12.5, the nerfs that she's getting here are going to make her pretty much entirely unviable. There's just no argument for picking her. Fiddlesticks, Karthus, and Diana are all much better scaling AP threats. There's literally nothing that she brings to the table that makes her even worth looking at. The other jungler to stay away from is Qiyana. As predicted, the nerf that she got last patch completely gutted her in this role. Like most assassins, if you want to win with Qiyana, you have to snowball early and get strong enough to one-shot squishies by the time that you reach team fights. But with her burst being so much lower now, it's hard to 1v1 the enemy jungler, and ganks aren't nearly as successful. She just isn't able to consistently find leads early on, and has little to no impact at later points of the game without one. She's still fine as a mid laner, since you have the option to go for multiple trades before committing to a kill. But jungling is all about being able to go for that 100-0 fights. Personally, I'm pretty glad that the Qiyana nerfs happened. I think assassins like Qiyana and Talon are toxic for the game when they become meta junglers. Seeing them being forced into the mid lane only feels right. And that brings us to today's question of the day. What are some champions that are balanced in one role but are really toxic in another? I think I see another really good example of this was when Lee Sin was being played as a solo laner. I think just max E second and auto win every matchup with very little room for counterplay is not that fun. He's probably the best at the jungle where you really need the good mechanics to actually be useful, but that's just my opinion and we want to hear from you. So let us know what you guys think in the comments down below. Now without further ado, let's get back on topic. Now for the mid lane, we'll be looking at Gangplank. Surprisingly, a pretty good chunk of GB players try to make him work as a mid laner. In fact, in my personal experience, I've actually seen more mid GPs than top GPs so far this season. In a couple of matchups it may go well, but in general it's an awful idea that you shouldn't really be trying. Gangplank is already hard enough champion to pull off as it is, and is something that most people really aren't good enough at to make him worth picking even as a top laner. But playing him mid is playing him on hard mode. Mages can easily poke you out and deny your barrels from your range attacks. you never really even reach a point where you can go ahead and get on them and force trades, and they just get free farm against you. Melee matchups are even worse. In the top lane, GP can use his long lane to zone out other melee champions pretty hard, but the shorter lane makes that pretty hard to do. Your opponents can sit back, safely getting what farm they can. Most melee mid laners have pretty high kill threat with their ultimate, so you're pretty likely to be dead once they hit level 6. The other mid laner that we'll talk about today is Ezreal. Ezreal mid is a fairly rare pick to see, but 3-4% of Ezreals end up being played in the mid lane. But when it is picked, it's one of the worst performing picks in the game, sitting about a 42% win rate. As much as we talk about how awful Lucian mid is on this channel, I'd even take that on my team over having an Ezreal. There isn't really anything much to do here. He's a super weak laner, so whether you're laning against an assassin or a mage, you're going to be letting someone get free farm, and they're guaranteed to be more useful than you later on into the game. Ez mid definitely takes a trophy for being the worst champion on our list this week, and maybe you should be banned for locking him in ranked. Normals is whatever, right? Just go have fun, do whatever you want. Moving things down in the bot lane, we'll start off with Varus. Yeah, he's been in our worst champion series pretty much every patch for months now, but that's because it hasn't changed. The ADC meta is so stale, so maybe just blame Riot on this one. Maybe instead of just shuffling around numbers and giving placebo nerfs to Ahri, they'll eventually try to shake up the meta. Anyway, Varus just doesn't have anything to offer. He's an early game bully that isn't really able to bully anybody, so the game is dead basically right from the start. The only other thing that he has to offer is a CC from his ultimate, but Ashe and Jhin are better utility picks, while also being strong laners and putting out good numbers in teamfights. Another ADC that you'll want to avoid is Caitlyn. This spot really belongs to Aphelios, but for the sake of not repeating both of last patch's worst ADCs, we're putting in our third pick. Not that long ago, she was one of the most dominant pick that you should go with in solo queue. She actually started to fall off quite a bit after her 12.3 nerfs, but when those came through, she was basically rendered completely unviable. She isn't able to bully lane just quite as hard as before, and when she does get a lead, it just isn't nearly as impactful. Honestly, going for Kate when other ADCs like Jinx and Jhin are still dominant seems a bit off base, but like I said before, you never really know how Riot's team decides things. Now, to round out our list with some supports, the first champion that I'm going to need you guys to stop picking is Malphite. Whoever makes an argument for this guy being a support simply because of his ultimate is a moron. I'm sorry. Having a big engage tool every couple of minutes simply isn't worth how behind your ADC is going to be. In the top lane, Malphite is going to be able to bully melee bruisers hard and keep them down at all stages of the game with his oppressive trading. But in the bot lane, where you're going to have to deal with ranged opponents, the exact opposite is true. You'll rarely get in range throughout any Qs and much less land any Es, and the end result is your ADC 2v1ing and falling behind at a pretty rapid pace. Also, Malphite is surprisingly gold reliant to be useful in fights, and being a support doesn't really exactly give you much income to work with. If you try to build tanky, you'll just end up squishy and be melted in fights. If you try to build AP, you won't have the power to one-shot backliners and end up dying even faster. Just be a normal player and lock in Leona or Nautilus if you want to pick up and engage support. Another somewhat off-meta support that gets enough play to make this list is Ivern. I can almost see why people want to pick him as a support. He's an enchanter after all, right? But please ask yourself one question. What does Ivern offer that other enchanters don't? Neither his peel nor his shielding compares to any other champion in this class. He definitely doesn't offer much poke, so his lane presence is a lot lower. And when it comes to scaling, they have him beat there too. Look, sometimes picking cheesy off-meta supports can work out, but that's usually the case with a champion having high utility or surprising amounts of burst damage like LeBlanc. But most of the time, picking somebody just for the sake of being different, like with Ivern or Malphite, is just going to result in you being useless, your ADC being tilted, and your entire team losing some LP. And that about wraps things up for our worst 10 champions on patch 12.5. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. And if you did, make sure you sub so you never miss out on our meta guides, and you're always in the loop on what the best picks are. Remember to let us know a champion that is balanced in one role but super toxic in another down in the comments below. And one last thing, don't forget to check out our Discord in the description box below, where you can go ahead and discuss League further or just hang out and be part of the community. I can't wait to see you guys back in the next video, but until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and have a wonderful day. Peace.